As a lot of you probably know, my channel was hacked not too long ago. It's back in my control now, and I believe that I've verified that fact with YouTube, but it was a stressful week. Fair warning, this video is going to get pretty heavy, to the point where I feel obligated to include a trigger warning for the S word. This video is going to be way more focused on the course of events and their psychological ramifications than it will be on the technical details of what happened. I'm not the person to talk to about that stuff. With that out of the way, let's get right into it. I was up on a mountain, not too far away from my parents' house the other day, struggling with a script. All I had had that day was a cup of coffee, so I was getting a bit lightheaded. My channel had been doing especially well lately after the success of my Half-Life 2 and GTA 5 videos, so in an act of procrastination, I decided to check the YouTube Studio app to see my analytics. Tetrabit Gaming. That's strange, must be a glitch. I refreshed and it was still there. That's when I opened the YouTube app and saw it. There's my sub counts, but my profile picture, my banner, my username, and indeed all of my videos were missing, and in their stead, some generic branding for a crappy channel trying to get its feet off the ground by playing into trends and trying to manipulate the algorithm. There was a live stream running that fit a similar description, telling people to buy some sort of cryptocurrency, undoubtedly a scam. I immediately knew what happened. I had been hacked. I checked the YouTube Studio app again and saw that my videos were indeed still there, but that they had all been unlisted, along with my playlists. Immediately, I drove like a bullet to the nearest place I knew the Wi-Fi password, my parents' house. I practically shoved my way past them with no further explanation than I was hacked. And I threw my laptop down in my dad's office and called up the one person I trust with my YouTube password on Discord. There was only so much I could do with a Chromebook, so if we had two people working to solve the problem, it would make our odds much better. Step 1 was, of course, to change the password to my account, before this hacker could do the same. Either the script, and yes, it was most definitely a script, was extremely poorly thought out, or the hacker didn't have what they needed to change my password, because we managed to change the password before they could. It took about 30 minutes of work, because while the hacker couldn't change my password, they could and did revoke access to my account from my phone and my laptop. We had to keep logging in over and over until eventually we were able to stay logged in long enough to change the password. Logging in so much was a serious pain because of my two-factor authentication, which, yes, I was using. In theory, you need to be holding my phone in your hand or having me read off of it to log into my account. Obviously, the hacker didn't have that. We have an idea of how they did it, but as much as I'd like to share that theory, I don't think it would be in my best interest security-wise. You don't want to teach people how to build a bomb, after all. Hey guys, so you're probably wondering why my audio quality just changed. That's because I have a bit of a candid announcement to make, and there's nowhere better for me to be candid than in my car. I've chosen to put this announcement in this video because it's about my channel, and I suspect that more of my subscribers will watch this video than something that's based on a game that maybe will have spoilers for them in it. So that announcement. At my 200,000 subscriber video, at the very end, I announced that I was trans-questioning. Well, I am no longer trans-questioning, I am transgendered. She, her are the pronouns. And, before anybody, goes and immediately clicks off after hearing that, I just want to say my stance on transphobia. I don't hate transphobes. I love them, just like I love everybody else. And the result of that is I don't want to see anybody in the comments, myself included, anybody, responding to the comments that will inevitably be under here, saying like, oh, you're trans unsubbed. I don't want to see anybody responding to those with, like, good, get out of here, or whatever, we don't want you here, glad you're gone, any of that. I don't want to see any of it. And that's because, as much as I hate to sound like a preacher, or whatever, anger just only begets more anger, and you know I'm right. And, they call it transphobia, xenophobia, homophobia, whatever, because it's a fear, and fear is exclusively of the unknown. It's up to us to break that cycle of just getting mad at each other, and be compassionate and love each other so that we can learn something. I know this all sounds incredibly hippy-dippy communist, whatever, but it's up to us to educate. When I first came out, I saw someone on Twitter saying, oh, she's a, well, he is the pronoun they used, oh, he's just a transgendered, promiscuous, whatever, and they don't know if I'm promiscuous or not. Those two things are not related, but again, it's an ignorance. They didn't know that. It wasn't evil or hatred in their heart or whatever. It's an ignorance of what exactly being transgendered is and what it means and how it relates to sex and all that stuff. They just didn't know. And so, in a similar vein, I don't want to see anybody aggressively defending my pronouns. You know, people are going to use the wrong pronouns. I still sound like a man in these videos, period. So people are going to be using the wrong pronouns, and I don't want to see you guys getting angry about that, or even, like, over-aggressively correcting them or anything. Because, you know, you don't want to make a new normal by fighting what's currently there, otherwise you've just got a whole lot of unrepresented feelings. And the best way to make a new normal, where everyone is using my correct pronouns, which obviously I prefer, is to just use them yourselves. The new people will come in, they'll see comments using she, her when referring to me, and they'll figure out what's going on, and they won't feel so like it's dangerous to ask. I don't want anyone to feel, whether they're transphobic or not, I don't want anyone to feel like they aren't completely welcome in this community. And last thing to mention, there will be a proper video covering all of this stuff soon, just talking about my emotional experiences with it, because I think it's really interesting subject matter, similar to the Desert Bus video where I talked about reconnecting with an old friend without any pretense of actually being about a game. So that's really all I have to say, so thank you guys, I'll quit taking up so much of your time, and enjoy the rest of the video. I love you. Anyways, with the most immediate threat, the hacker's access, dealt with, the next step was to get home to my Windows PC so I could do the serious work. As this was happening, my friend was relisting all of my videos and changing the name of my profile back to Leadhead. I would have really liked to stay on the phone with him as I drove home, but my stress-induced motion sickness was so bad at this point, I was certain that it was about to cascade into a full-blown vertigo attack, as I call them, for the first time in over a year. Fortunately, really fortunately, it didn't come to that. Driving always calmed me down, even in an emergency situation like this one, where I was, naturally, speeding like a bat out of hell. I had already tweeted to YouTube creators asking them what my next steps should be, and between that tweet and all the people DMing me about it, my phone was about to explode. But I set all of that aside when I got home and got to work on what I needed to do, contacting YouTube. Fortunately, if you're an established creator who speaks English, it doesn't take more than a minute or two to get into a text conversation with YouTube support at any time of day. We've all heard the horror stories about YouTube deleting channels which have been hacked, and by this point, I had pins and needles in my fingertips. I was hyperventilating as I rapidly took screenshots of various things, snapped photos of my legal ID, grabbed my IP address, and gathered all sorts of other stuff to send to YouTube as evidence that I am in fact the one who was meant to own this channel. I'm usually okay under stress, and my friend and I were taking the proper steps to getting this thing fixed. But man, I was facing the prospect of having almost everything I love, almost everything that validates me as a member of society, my dream job, taken away from me. I was absolutely freaking out, physically, mentally, emotionally, every type of way that one can freak out. I don't know what exactly constitutes a panic attack. I know that I had one when I was 16 and I stripped down to my boxers and ran through the snow crying and screaming. The evening I was hacked, I believe that was my second panic attack. My hands were shaking like an old man's for several hours. The adrenaline rush of facing all my work being completely destroyed overtook my appetite, and I didn't eat a single thing that day until around 6 p.m., save for a can of V8. I was hyperventilating for at least the first hour, hardly able to get a coherent sentence out other than just barking orders at my friend who was helping me. It was seriously rough. I know it might seem like I'm being overly dramatic, but again, this channel is really all I have that's truly mine. It provided me with everything I need to live, from food to warmth to personal fulfillment. I was in a bad way when I realized that my next few messages from YouTube might determine if I'd lose it all or not. And that's when we get to the awkward state I was left in that led me to taking a couple of weeks off, even after everything was resolved. Around 11 p.m. I emailed the agent that I'd been personally assigned by YouTube, asking them to just say the phrase, "We will not under any circumstances delete your channel because of this." I knew I wouldn't get a reply until the next day, at best, so I went and did the thing I always do when I need to offload some stress. I went for a drive. Finally, alone with my thoughts, I was, of course, thinking about the channel and what might become of me were it deleted. All the worst kinds of thoughts. Around midnight, I was on the verge of tears when I decided to head up to my parents' place, just to see if my dad was, by chance, still awake at the fire pit. I just needed to hug someone and cry. He was long asleep. It was on the way back down from their road that I had a violent return to thoughts that I hadn't had since high school. I won't say the word, you know what I'm talking about, and I'll get more into it in next week's video on Spiritfarer, but if you ever find yourself having those sorts of thoughts, I don't care if you're scared or worried about putting that baggage on the people around you, or even if you're estranged from these people or whatever, you absolutely have to vent those thoughts to the people you care about, period, no ifs, ands, or buts. That's what I did with my friend to help me get control of my channel back, as if he needed any more stress for the day. Around 1 or 2 a.m., I sent this long, frankly disgusting message to him, knowing full well that he too was long asleep. It was just my way of hugging someone and crying, I guess. It was bad. I was feeling so low, so vulnerable that I got my first pack of cigarettes in nearly 9 months, breaking my longest streak of being off of them. And even now that my channel's back in my hands, and it's like the whole thing never happened, I'm still trying to drop that disgusting habit for hopefully the last time. The moral of the story here is pretty simple. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Financially, sure, I've got all my eggs in the YouTube basket. I haven't gone to college, I've only worked a couple of physical jobs, leaving me with a pretty slim resume in all fields but this one, and my savings aren't quite where they need to be yet. But emotionally, I've put all my eggs in this basket too. This is the first meaningful thing I've ever done, and I just can't go back, you know? Well, that night, after I sent that disgusting message to my friend, even as the 5th or 6th cigarette was burning away in my hand, I felt like I had a new lease on life after dealing with those sorts of dark thoughts for the first time in over 6 years. I dedicated myself to saving up the money I need to make my game. I'm not confirming anything. I learned from my last venture in amateur game development that that's a mistake to do so early on. But I just need something to give my life some value that can't be taken away by anyone but myself. So, to summarize and close the book on this dark, dark month, at least until next week's video on Spiritfarer, life is valuable as hell. It's so easy to find something that you love, that works really well for you, and assume that it's the only thing you'll ever love, and the only thing that will ever work so well for you. But if analytics mean anything, you're still young. You've got no idea what you'll be doing in 10 years. You've got no idea if you'll love it more or less than what you're doing now. You've got no idea how you'll change and grow as a person. So, never give up. And for God's sake, use randomly generated passwords.